Hi,
Hi,
I'm Jane,
I'm Sarah.
and we are the Yoga Posers. Woohoo! Yeah, today we're going to unwind and pick apart the twist. Some basic twists, right? We've done forward folds, we've done back bends, we've done standing poses, and, we haven't twisted yet.
Twists are important for the spine, for the health of the spine.
Yeah,
And it's a move that you can easily do incorrectly,
yeah.
maybe harm the spine, as many people say.
Well, and one of the counterindications is if you have spinal damage, right?
Right. But then these are the people that need twists.
And I also feel if we were to really look under the hood, I bet a lot of us would have some spinal damage.
Yeah, you can be asymptomatic with disc issues. And that's the mystery, right? Why do some people have symptoms, some people don't, even though radiographically it's still showing damage to the spine? And I think it's because of how they move.
It definitely can be how they move. And then there's also
Posture.
Posture, which comes into play with rotations a lot. And if your back's hurting, it could just be you're rageful. So there's lots of ways that we can feel discomfort in our body.
Yeah. So it's all about how you do what you do. So
Right.
theoretically, you should be able to do anything you want with your body within reason, but you have to do it properly and well. And the more you tend to have excessive rigidity, excessive symptoms, excessive mobility, that's when you're going to pay particular attention to how you're doing something.
Right.
If you're coasting fine in generic yoga classes, great.
Yeah.
If you're having trouble, your SI joint goes out, you have low back pain during many of the poses, then you really want to start to take a look at your alignment.
Yeah, and it's one of the major complaints about this is that it hurts your low back, the inability to breathe, and that it's just really crunchy, like it makes you small.
Right. Or some people feel like they can't twist well. A lot of people feel like I can't twist. And especially in the cervical spine, say in triangle pose, you're supposed to be rotating the neck and the head so that you can look up towards the ceiling. Often that piece is missing. I can't look. I feel pain. I feel a limitation in the range of motion. The next we'll be talking about that.
Yeah, and what's kind of cool about this is the more we work through these postures, the more, to me, it all comes back to initiate all movement from your core. And when we do twists frequently, especially if it's just a seated twist, a lot of times people will use their arm as leverage to pull, or their elbow, or they're trying to use the limb to initiate the rotation. And we want the rotation to be from the core, and the limbs can anchor or stabilize, but it's not them that's creating the movement.
Yeah. And I would say the most important thing that you want to think about with a twist is the inhale, is the lengthening. And you're talking about using the core, which will be mostly on an exhale. That's when those abdominals come in and the back muscles also to help us rotate. And so you need both. And the older you are, the more you need that inhale.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, because the lengthening of the spine is really important to making sure that this rotation is happening in the joints in a way that creates freedom, doesn't create friction.
Yeah. And what happens as we age is there's a lot of loss of disc height, especially as we get lower in the spine. And the only thing that's hydrating these discs is movement. And a twisting puts the most amount of shear stress on the vertebrae, which can help build bone when twists are properly done. But improperly done, you might be just grinding one or two of those vertebrae against one another in those facet joints, creating some nerve impingement, some chronic rotation, people who are stuck in a rotation. That's when we start to see the harmful effects of prolonged rotation, improperly done rotation.
Yeah. Almost when you're talking about, I'm thinking, well, I'm just going to avoid twists. But that's the last thing we want to do.
Right. And I think if you don't know how to twist, then you should be asking your teacher, look at my pose. How can I do this differently? So what we can do is distinguish between a turn and a twist.
Yeah.
So if you're standing and you turn to look behind you, you can let your pelvis turn and the whole body turn. The feet stay fixed. So there's some rotation happening at the ankle. Most of this is then happening at the hip. And the pelvis is allowed to turn, which is healthy and normal and good. And so that's a turn. And if we take that into a high lunge where the legs are separated, you can turn towards the front leg and the pelvis turns with you. And that back thigh would often drop. And that's one way that it's probably safest way to twist is to just turn. Don't really twist.
Right.
And then what we get into is, well, that might be a way to avoid some of the issues that come up, sacroiliac dysfunction, too much torquing in the low back. But eventually we do want to teach our spine to isolate thoracic and lumbopelvic movement.
Yeah.
So we'd like those parts to move independently of one another and to counter twist against each other. And that's a healthy movement that can maybe come in once the spine is more warmed up and with some more sophisticated cueing.
Those two segments, those are the two main components of the core that we want to stack on top of each other, that we want them to move independently. And then we think of the limbs, and one of the limbs is often considered the neck and the head. So I want my head to be able to rotate. I want my ribs to be able to rotate, and I want them to all be able to work independently of the other anchors in our core, right?
And I think it gets into some of the cueing. So hopefully the standard issue out of the box cueing is inhale, lengthen, exhale, twist. And then the next cue is often initiate the twist from the lumbar spine, which is where I'm going to disagree. There's a lot of start from the bottom and twist up. Yeah. So when we start at the bottom, so say the sacrum and the pelvis, we're looking for no twisting in the pelvis. Right, there's two SI joints. S is for sacrum, I is for ilium. That's the name of that hip bone. And so those two joints, there should be very little movement there.
Right.
It should be a very, very stable joint. And that's when we get into trouble, is when that sacrum starts to twist against one of those hip bones and your sacrum is out. You go to the chiropractor, your sacrum's out. Oh, I know this pain, this dull ache, which many people call low back pain, which I would say stop calling it that. It's sacral pain, and you want to distinguish that because they're approached extremely differently. Then we get into the lumbar spine. We have 5 to 15 degrees of cumulative rotation in those 5 vertebrae. So we're going to say almost none, right? So we're really trying to limit rotation of the lumbar spine, especially when the pelvis is fixed. So say if you're sitting, or say if you are holding your pelvis very still in a lunge, well, you don't want to twist your lumbar spine over a stable pelvis, then you're grinding L5S1.
But the lumbar spine has really easy flexion and extension.
Yes, and that's the way the facet joints are set up. That's what it's supposed to do. The lumbar spine can forward fold, it can back bend, and it can side bend.
Right.
But it's limited in twisting.
Right. Instead,
we want to see that turn. We want to see the whole pelvis turn, the whole body turn, or just the thoracic, cervical, and head.
And so what that means is you're going to find your body is going to try to give you movement by going into flexion or extension in the low back, right? That's not going to serve you. That's going to be a little gunky. That'll hurt.
Or that's part of the pose. So many yoga poses, we start to say, I want you to forward fold and twist and side bend. Those are more advanced poses. Those are your seated poses, especially the pelvis is fixed. You're going to do Janu Shirsasana. You're going to twist with your pelvis on the floor. And the muscles tend to relax. And then they want you to round your spine as you try to bind and twist.
Yeah.
That's when you're going to have the most opportunity for something to go wrong. It's when the spine is neutral that you have the greatest capacity to rotate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we go up to the thoracic spine, then it's built for rotation. Still not a lot. It's like 35, 40 degrees.
Right.
No one agrees on these numbers, by the way, because a lot of it's done on a cadaver. Anyway, lots of range in the cervical spine, 80, 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Right. So cumulatively, add up all those numbers, quite a capacity for rotation. It is in there. And if it's built for that, this isn't something that's bad. It's something that's good and healthy and necessary. It's one of the ways that people fall when they lose this ability, you call it, to disaggregate.
Yeah. These 3 major anchor points are just glued together. And so when people go to do a turn quickly, they fall because a couple of reasons. One, it's like they can't just turn their head, right? So they try to turn their head and then their shoulders come and then their pelvis comes, and they haven't planned that with their feet. It puts them out of that relationship with gravity, and then they fall, right? So you want to be able to move independently so that you can actually look over and see what your grandkid's doing without having to turn your whole body.
Yeah.
So that's why we want to twist.
Yeah. And you'll recognize this lack of twist in elderly people with a shuffling walk, a side to side walk.
Yeah.
And you'll notice the arms stop swinging. The older someone is, the less their arms swing. And part of our arms swinging is to facilitate this natural twisting action that happens when we walk.
Yeah. Okay. So now we know why we want to do the twist. Since we did our last conversation on this, I was paying attention to how often I twisted in my classes. And I twist right off the bat. I twist a lot with people. And that idea of warm up, make the twist easier at the beginning, then move into a deeper twist, and have people always continuing to get long as they rotate, and have them pay attention to the base of the pose and what the base of the pose is doing. So 2 of us in the class are doing it on an exercise ball, which I'm on, which is really fun because you can try to root down through the sit bones and then rotate the ribs. And that is really fun to play with. You can obviously do it seated, but you just don't get quite the fun elastic bounce feedback to it. It's not quite as playful.
Right, that weight shift. I see how that could be very helpful. And you could even do it if you're just sitting in a chair now, listening to us. You just sit with your feet flat on the floor, and then you'd start to turn your body. You'll feel a shift in the weight, and you'll even feel that each pelvic half can move independently of the other. And this movement is not wrong, but for people who are very unstable in their joints, this little movement, if say I'm twisting right, that right ilium drops backwards. We could call it into a tuck, into a posterior tilt, and the left one goes more anterior, relatively speaking. So they're torsioning against each other. Again, an okay movement as long as it's not too much. And this is how you can feel what's happening. You think, oh, my pelvis is not moving, but it does want to move as we do this. And we can choose to stop that movement.
Yeah.
Or we can allow it to happen. So say we start with a warm-up pose. So how would you start in a class? So you said you introduce twists right away.
I do. Typically, one of the first twists I'll do is you're set up for gate pose, and then I come down to tabletop. My left leg is out to the side. I'll take my right arm forward just a smidge, and then I take my left arm, reach it up, twist the ribs open, and the right side of the pelvis will drop down. It comes with me. And then I take my left arm, I thread it underneath my right, I come down to the ground, my ribs rotate, and my left pelvis will drop down.
Okay, so essentially you're trying to twist the thoracic with a relatively stable lumbopelvic base.
Yeah.
So when both knees are on the ground, so any kind of a thread the needle pose is stable lumbopelvic area.
Yeah.
And so I would say, you're making that decision early. Are you going to cue the pelvis staying stationary, or because it's a warm-up, you're just going to let it shift around side to side? And you'll see that instead of the thighs staying perpendicular to the floor, they tend to become oblique, right?
Yeah. And I think though, but because you're on your knees, the limbs aren't as long, so there's not quite as much space for movement, right? I do feel like if we were to do that standing, the ability for the hip to drop would be greater than when the limbs are shorter.
And I love the compare and contrast. So I like starting with that. We'll definitely side bend first and lots of circling of the arms. And if we're trying to twist the ribs, we want to start to open up the space between the ribs and get that circulation going and get the breath going and encourage that with arm circles and side bends. Then if you're in table and you want to thread the needle, put a block between the legs, let the pelvis follow. And I just say twist part way. Say just twist 25% of the way, come in and out, and feel how the weight is shifting on your knees. Feel how your pelvis is dropping. The classic example for yoga teachers is if there was a tea set, I guess we're all in England drinking tea.
On your bum.
On the back of the pelvis, right? Notice how the tea would spill.
Yeah.
All of the things would clatter to the ground as you try to get this thoracic rotation. And notice if you're feeling any sensation around the sides of the ribs or in the core. And then say, okay, now we're going to hold the pelvis still, squeeze the block, shift your pelvis to the right as you thread the right arm behind the left. So as you're trying to twist left, then you're trying to shift the pelvis the opposite direction. And you'll feel so much more of this twist being isolated and directed up into the thoracic. You'll feel like a really nice stretch and loosening through this area. And you can just progressively slide that arm farther and farther without letting the pelvis follow.
It's funny because in a class, I'm not nearly as cautionary, I think.
You're on your own, folks.
No, come to my class to get injured. No, I do not do that. I mean, I think I'm very attentive, but I always tell people, you're exploring what's available to you in your body. if you start clenching your jaw, if you stop breathing, if you start feeling any discomfort, that's information to you and you need to adapt, right? So we're always just simply looking for the boundaries and we want to move into the boundary, not beyond the boundary.
Right. And I would say people have no boundaries. This is the number one issue with people and people who come to yoga, no boundaries. And so I would say, especially at the beginning, we're just coming in really slowly. For me, like every group class, I want to teach one specific thing. I know I want to work on twists. So I'm going to work on distinguishing between a turn and a twist. And so we do that standing. So I would start with a standing warm up so that the feet are fixed and everything else can move readily. And then gradually put a block between the legs and then start to isolate that to more thoracic and then more cervical. And then build that into poses and say, how do we let the pelvis follow? How do we not? Empowering you. Like, yeah, we can flow through and do these same 40 poses that you've done every yoga class you've ever been in.
Right.
Or we can start to tease this apart so that you have more capacity to make these decisions and go as far as you want.
Right.
And you'll go much, much further with lots more rich sensation and satisfaction when you start to give the body a point of stability and then ask for mobility.
Right. Right. Which is what you want to do with your kids. Give them a safe grounding and then let them move and roam, knowing they can come back to their stability. All these things are the same damn story.
It's all the same thing. Yeah, and people just think in yoga class, I'm going to go as far as I can. I want to feel as much as I can. They don't even have a sense of what the boundaries should be. They have no idea. They're walking blind. Unless you tell them what to pay attention to, they have no idea what to pay attention to. Luckily, most vinyasa classes will get them breathing, and that's good. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And once I've said it 5,000 times in one class, hopefully you're breathing. That's the best thing vinyasa classes do, is get rhythm and breath going. Everything else is low-grade injury.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
That's my biased view. I realize I'm very hypermobile, and I deal with a very, very hypermobile population.
And hypermobile is really a distinct and serious body type that needs to be tended to, because hypermobile is the one body type that is most likely to cause massive harm going as far as they can into sensation.
And here's what I'll say about people who are stiff is that one part of their body can move, and that part is relatively hypermobile. Everybody gets into trouble because the part that can move too easily and readily does. And it doesn't matter if you've been diagnosed as having EDS or hypermobility syndrome, right? It doesn't matter because everybody's moving improperly. Too readily somewhere and not enough somewhere else. And I think that's our job, is to say, like, where are you moving? What part's moving? Map out your body, like feel your body. Can you move your thoracic independently of your lumbar spine, your pelvis?
Yeah.
Can you move your neck?
Yeah.
From the base of the skull instead of from the bottom of the neck? All right, let's get back to warm-ups. What other warm-ups are good for twists?
For twists?
What's a classic?
Just a seated twist.
Yeah, right. A seated
Yeah.
sukhasana
Yeah.
or kneeling.
Yeah. And so you just reach your arms up, get nice and tall, and then exhale, rotate towards one knee, right? Don't make it too aggressive. Inhale, get tall again. Always remember to get tall through center, and then exhale, rotate again. And these are nice and easy because you're not trying to go so deeply that people tend to shrink the core. The deeper they're going into a twist, the more likely people are to shorten the spine to get there. And if you're just getting tall, rotating the ribs, getting tall, rotating the ribs, that's a nice little warm up.
Yeah, and I love the arms up that you're suggesting. I think and keep the arms up through the twist. And instead of putting the arm down, pulling, keep them up, do your thoracic twist, and then put the arms down, and then work that light leverage.
So even when you think of twisting, to be like, I'm going to take the front of my right chest and pull that back. I'm going to use the left back ribs to press that forward. And then my arms are simply extensions of the core. They can further the rotation, but I'm not like pulling them out of the joint. I'm simply using the core. And what's so fun about it is everything's core work, right? You don't have to sit there and do some bicycles at the end of class. because absolutely everything is core work.
Only if you're using your core correctly.
Yeah.
Then yes, it is. It's how you do the pose. Right. Because you can even do a quote unquote core pose incorrectly. So maybe it's worth talking about the specific kind of sensation, because people don't know what to feel. Maybe they think, to use my core, I just hold my breath, or I just tighten everything, or they replicate a sit up and try to press their lumbar spine flat. So people don't know how to access their core. We shouldn't assume as teachers that they do. And so to access your core, this will happen on an exhale. Narrow the hip points towards each other. You can zip up. But specifically for twisting, we're looking for a core sitting action. So yoga teachers talk about this narrowing through the rib cage. That's your external obliques wrapping from the sides of the rib cage, feathering down, attaching to the pelvis. And so specifically, you want sensation on the sides of the ribs and a specific sense of narrowing as you're twisting. That's the sensation that we're looking for. The internal obliques assist in the twist, but if you don't feel your ribs narrowing, you're probably using your back too much. You're the muscles in the back that assist the twist, which are good and healthy and supposed to.
For some reason, I think core understanding is so superficial, probably because we've always been paying attention to how do we look in a bathing suit or, the six pack or whatever. But just using the tissue in that part of your body to manage the orientation and location of the bony structure, and then to allow movement to happen from which your limbs can fly.
Yeah, because your abdominals are key anti-rotation muscles, and they also can create rotation.
Yeah.
So they both allow and disallow. And I would say that most students need to first learn to disallow unintentional rotation that's happening in the pelvis.
Right.
Lots of ways to do that. Lying on your back, tip a knee out to the side, the whole pelvis rotates. So you're trying to counter rotate. The abdominals are trying to twist the other way. They're anti-rotation.
Right.
And some of that's happening then when we try to twist through the thoracic. So although the abdominals, those external obliques, are still assisting in thoracic rotation, we're then using deeper abdominals, transverse abdominis, even rectus abdominis, to control pelvic tilt, to control
a little bit of the glutes too. We use the glutes too in this stuff, but not the clenching. It's fascinating when you start using your glutes as part of your core to stabilize the hardware, and not just a butt clench.
So how would you use the glutes in a twist? Like, give me a pose.
So if I'm sitting here and I want to twist to the right, I could think of taking the right glute and pressing that forward into my pelvis.
Oh, that's interesting, to stop that backwards tilt. Yeah. I've always approached it from like dragging up through the multifidi, taking those knuckles to the back of the pelvis. This is such a helpful place for anyone to start understanding the twist. Is put your hands at the back of your pelvis with your fingers pointing in towards the middle of the pelvis, and then twist a little right, twist a little left, and you're going to feel those bones tip back immediately. And to counter that, I've dragged the fingers up or put my knuckles on the back of the pelvis and slide that skin up and then twist. Now I feel it happening in my thoracic spine, and I don't feel that looseness in the pelvis turning, each ilium rotating against each other. I don't feel that when I'm dragging those knuckles up. You're looking to start understanding how to twist, maintaining a neutral spine.
Right. And and again, like using the core, let's say we're doing a side bend, right? And I'm twisted because it's hard for me to do. Then I'll try to get long, right? I try to reach the opposite sit bone down, get as long as I can. And then I use the core again to untwist, right? So it's like take the back of the ribs on your lower ribs and press them forward. Use the front ribs to pull back. So you use the core to navigate the hardware back to neutral. Yeah. And it's really nice to have a relationship with your core that can do that stuff.
Yeah. So just keep labeling, where am I supposed to feel this? It's the best question you can ask as a student. Ask your teacher, where am I supposed to be feeling this? And teachers, you're not allowed to say, well, it's wherever you feel it in your unique body. That's a cop-out. Although that's a legitimate answer and it's 100% true, we could say you're not supposed to feel it here, you're not supposed to feel it there, you're not supposed to feel it in your joints, not in your hip crease, not in your SI joint, not in your neck. I mean, we could at least narrow it down or say to the student, well, where are you feeling sensation?
Yeah.
Well, it's all in my back. Okay, well, that's not being done correctly.
Right. Well, and part of that conversation of where you're feeling it, where you're not feeling it, is the skill of developing this awareness of your body, mind, and space.
Right. But most people just need to learn really basic things about the twist. So neutral being, you're not increasing or decreasing sagittal curves.
Right.
You're not excessively rounding your upper back
Not
or
a big
arching
back bend.
it, and the same with the low back and the same with the neck. So all of that staying relatively the same, and you're only introducing one new thing. So the side bend or the twist, a twist without a side bend without a twist. I do a lot of this in my classes, like correcting. Okay, we're starting out with the side bends. I come around, you're twisting, don't twist, don't twist, don't twist, don't twist. Now you're twisting, don't side bend, don't side bend, don't side bend. And then with advanced poses, of course, you're layering a side bend with a twist with rounding, which is fine. But then you're teaching people to pay attention to that so that you can get the intention of the pose. You can get the stretch to where, or the sensation to where it should be. Once you warm up, now you're going to do some standing poses. And we've already talked Warrior 2. There's a twist in Warrior 2 of the thoracic spine until the rib cage is parallel to the long edge of the mat. But the pelvis is turning slightly towards the front leg.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about this. I love to do, go crescent lunge. And then I like to rotate closed, and obviously your back
towards the front leg.
Because again, you have to awaken the core. You have to draw the low belly in to bring things out. Your back hip is going to move with it, but you can try to challenge that by simply reaching back and using the quad to lift up the thigh. So the thigh
using your glute and your hamstring to lift the back thigh. We've talked about this. Go back to the high lunge for that whole debate about what muscles lift the back thigh in high lunge. Don't worry about it.
I'm still debating this, obviously, in my head.
I think because if you had just come from a low lunge, I think is where you were saying, then you would contract the quad to help straighten the back leg. But if you're already in a high lunge and the leg is sagging,
then you use your glute and your hamstring.
Those are the muscles that are anti-gravity, right?
Yeah.
And that they pull the thigh bone back. That's their job.
Yeah.
And the quad has a couple of jobs.
It's the party person. It's up
underneath.
there with his hands up.
I mean,
underneath.
the quad's going to work for sure in the pose. The quad is working. You can't separate them. So a lot of people have a flaccid butt in this pose. And part of what you're looking for in a high lunge is for the psoas to release, right? So these deeper hip flexors to actually let go, and that quad is lengthening and the hip flexors are lengthening. And so at that, reciprocal inhibition, we get that glute to fire, hamstring to fire. I think when the glute works there, here's where your glute can help in that twist, is it can help prevent the pelvis.
It would be the
leash. It would be
the leash with the Dobermans.
Right. Well, those are those deep lateral rotators, right? Yeah. It's like, in a sense, it's like, how do I hold this back? But then massive, massive lengthening.
Right.
And so I'd say I love the open twist followed by a closed twist. Open twist, go in the direction that's much easier. Open twists are easy, great for pregnant folks because, you're not compressing and narrowing. As soon as you close a twist, you're inviting a lot of lumbar rounding. Especially if you're going to hook the elbow, you have to be. Now you've lost neutral spine for most people, right? Let's try it right now.
Okay. Sarah's going to go try it.
So I just hopped off to try that twisting high lunge. And I do feel that the spine rounds whenever you close the twist that deeply and hook the elbow to the outside of the knee, which is a very standard twist and a good twist and a safe twist and totally fine. But once you're getting into that rounding in the lumbar spine, it gets a little tricky.
Yeah, because then the shearing that you were talking about can happen, right? Because unless you're using your core to sort of mitigate it.
Well, and this is where I think we have to understand, so the front of the core will wrap around to the sides and then it connects to the back. But the back of the core is an important part of twisting. So certain poses will predispose you to overusing one side of the body to twist.
Right.
So say you're in a wide-legged forward fold, like a Prasarita Padottanasana, and then you twist.
I love that one.
Yeah. The cue is to put your hand on the floor and your torso is closer to parallel to the floor. Unless your hamstrings are really tight, then you're rounding, then you're raising the floor with a block, and then you're twisting. So people, because of that kind of a twist, people overuse their back.
Yeah.
Get a lot of pinching in the back, and they don't twist from their abdominals as much. And then I would say in that closed twist with the lunge, people might overuse their core and underuse the back muscles. So trying to lengthen through the lumbar spine and keep some tone there. As the back rounds, the muscles are turning off gradually. As the spine rounds more, there's more capacity for the vertebrae to not stay in a good alignment with one another.
Yeah.
So then, maximally lengthening as you twist and keeping some tone through the back as you twist in that twisting high lunge could be a safer way to approach that.
It's interesting because I think of the core as the back body and the front body. I don't think of it as just the front body. I think I was doing some research on it at some point in time. I believe they started talking about the core initially with their attention on the back body versus the front body. So, and I love to remind people of that because it's just like how we move through life, right? We think about how we present forward. We don't think about the back body quite as much.
We think about the parts we can see.
Yeah.
The belly.
Yeah, the belly.
But it's the core. The very name of it suggests that it's in the center of you.
Yeah.
And so just thinking of it as a 360-degree anti-rotational capacity through that lumbar spine and then driving the twist higher up.
I do love the wide-legged twist. And that's one of my favorite ones to sort of twist in the opposite direction first to kind of elevate the other hip and then try to keep that hip there as I rotate my ribs in the opposite direction.
Right. This is one where everybody turns, right? And it's hard to distinguish between that to get the feeling of an actual twist happening. When you turn and you let the pelvis drop, say you're twisting right in that Prasarita Padottanasana, the left hip will drop. The whole pelvis turns to the right with you, and you'll feel like you're going so far. It's really satisfying.
Yeah.
And then you say, okay, shift your pelvis to the left as you twist right, spin your navel to the left as you twist your sternum, your breastbone to the right, like all these kinds of cues to start to get that isolation of an actual twist instead of a turn. There's less range there.
Yeah.
But there's so much more of that impact that we want, right? The activation of the right muscles to help us twist. And then if you're getting the pinch, you're back bending then to try to get that turn to happen, and you actually need more front core. So anytime there's a pinch in the back body,
right,
you're arching too much wherever that pinch is happening.
It's something's being shortened.
Right. And
it's a pinch, just like if you were to take your cheeks and pinch them, you bring them together.
Shortening it. Yeah, absolutely. And that happens most commonly on the inner shoulder blade. Especially for people with a flat thoracic spine, lumbar spine, for those who arch too easily in the lumbar spine. So wait, I'm curious now. I'm trying to think of standing poses where you have a fixed thoracic. There aren't any. Is there a single pose, standing pose, where your thoracic is stable and you're trying to turn the lower body? I can't think.
The only thing I can think of, which I don't really recommend to people, is if you come to a forward fold and you know that when you do like your half moon and then you close your hips and then you open your hips and you close your hips and you try to keep your torso square to the ground.
Right.
But I also don't necessarily
That's just a turn.
recommend that. Well,
so I think if I understand, if you go from warrior 3 to a half moon on a stable leg.
Yeah. But let's put our hands down on the ground.
Oh, I see. Okay. So you're in warrior 3.
But you've got your hands on blocks or on the ground. Mm-hmm. They're going to stay there. So your chest is going to stay closed to the ground. And you're going to open the pelvis and close the pelvis.
Yeah. All of that movement's happening in the standing hip. Let's try it.
Okay. Here goes Sarah again. You know what we just did?
Lumbar spine
we did an experiment to see, yes, indeed, there is not a lot of rotational capacity in the lumbar spine.
Well,
at all. That was wild. That was fun to do.
Right. So we were trying to think of a standing pose where the thoracic is immobilized and then the lumbopelvic is moving. But since the lumbar spine doesn't twist, what's happening is you're just pivoting the pelvis over, hopefully a stable femur. But we know that when you're 45 minutes into your vinyasa flow, and you're going from a warrior 3 to a half moon, with keeping the hands fixed on the floor, you're going to get, we saw twisting in the thoracic, hopefully a stable lumbar spine. Yeah. The lumbar spine and the pelvis move as a unit. Yeah. And so when we think of moving the lumbar spine, when we think of a twist where your thoracic spine is stable, that's going to happen when you're lying down. Think of lying on your back and you're going to do a windshield wiper. Yeah. You're not twisting your low back. You're still twisting your thoracic. And it's the only thing that can twist, because there's a couple of degrees that can happen safely in the lumbar spine. But what's happening is you're just moving the lumbar spine and the pelvis as a unit. And some teachers really don't like this because they say it's too much. Everything's happening at T12. They're like, you're putting all the stress at T12, which I don't think it has to at all. But I think it can be well distributed through the spine. But we're not trying to twist the lumbar spine independently of the pelvis, independently of the thoracic. Yeah. And so what's the benefit of doing that? What are we doing? Why would we do that?
Why would I do a windshield wiper?
Yeah.
Okay, I can tell you why I do a windshield wiper. I do a windshield wiper for hip mobility. I do a windshield wiper to get a really nice lengthening of the quad and the psoas and to feel it all the way up into my ribs. I do windshield wipers because they're calming for the nervous system, and they offer a decent amount of low back release. And I believe that part of it is because, first of all, you're opening up some of the tissue. The movement is kind of a rocking, a little side to side. I do know some people who do windshield wipers, like there's a downpour, like they're going
really fast.
They're going really fast. And I'm like, no, pretend it's drizzling. And they basically, stay on one side.
What a good cue. I love that.
Yeah. Actually, I've never used that cue, but now I'm
it's
thinking
brilliant.
About it, like, we just want the drizzle,
Yeah. So I agree with everything that you said, that this is the purpose, that should be the intended purpose. I think here's what's so interesting is, why are you doing any pose? Right? We just assume like, oh, it's yoga and it's a yoga pose and it exists. And so it's unimpeachably good. Right. But like we've said before, like poses are neutral. So then an interesting way to think about yoga is to say, okay, I'm going to do this pose. Why? What is this pose for? What is it good at? And then if it's hip opening, well, you could open the hip in like 10 different ways. So in what way? And you mostly said front of the body, side of the body. Right. And so when we open the front of the body, the hips have to be in extension. So say your windshield wipers are going to your left, you're feeling that sensation in the front of the right side of the body, right waist, right quad, right abdomen. Such beautiful, perfect places to feel this. Exactly what you said is, I think, 100% correct. The wrong place would be in the low back on that right side. And that's when you've arched too much and you haven't done the hip extension, you haven't pushed into the foot, you haven't done the glute. Now, it's having a nervous system benefit by crossing the midline.
And the rocking sensation.
The rocking side to side is soothing when it's done slowly and appropriately, like the drizzle. But I'm curious, how is the twist a part of that? So what I like about a windshield wiper, to me, is it's like Supta Virasana for beginners. Okay. Because a lot of people can't do the pose where your knees are bent, completely closed, and then you're lying flat on your back. Essentially, you're in a back bend, but you're lying flat on the floor or on a bolster. That's way too much ask for a lot of people, and especially classes are only an hour now. Yeah, we're not getting to Supta Virasana. So a windshield wiper gives you that same benefit of that quad psoas release because the hips are in extension. So we want to make sure the hips extend and we reduce lumbar curve. Now the twist is that adding something to the psoas release. We see a similar action in the back leg of Warrior 1, that the back leg is planted, the heel ideally is planted, and you're twisting up and twisting away from the back foot with a thoracic spine. You're trying to square your ribs, not necessarily your pelvis. So in Warrior One, there's a twist.
Right.
And and it's like windshield wiper, except the back leg is straight. So it's much harder. All the poses are harder when the leg is straight.
Right.
They're deeper and more opportunity for things to go wrong.
Well, I'm sure there's, I'm thinking about the windshield wipers. Anytime we cross the midline, there's a neurological benefit. There's like braking, patterning, and stuff like that.
I want to tease this apart a little.
I know.
So rocking from side to side, crossing the midline, we said it was soothing, but it's usually the sagittal, hug your knees in, rock top to bottom. That's the soothing. The sagittal curve rocking is the one that calms us. The twisting disrupts the patterns.
Yeah, it disrupts the patterns, but like when you're doing any kind of somatic
Which is good.
work, when
it's
you're
good.
doing somatic work, there's often rolling side to side. There's all this rhythmic, easy movement. You're not trying to find the boundaries. You just get taken away with the flow, right? It's just like rocking a baby.
Right, but is it a turn or a twist? I mean, I think if you rock your whole body more like a log from one side to the other, it's just interesting. And I'm not saying any of it's wrong. It's interesting because this is the claim. And I'm always interested, like, okay, that's the claim. Why? And I always just like challenging that, teasing that apart and understanding it better. Because once I understand the thinking, then I can start to extrapolate it into more poses. I believe that I'm not discrediting it at all.
Right.
It's just like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Why? You cross the midline. There's a sharp division in the body between left and right. There's a lot of proprietary, it's a main dividing line.
Right.
And we can see that throughout geopolitical shit happening all over the world. Like these boundary lines are, you shall not cross.
Right.
Right. But when we do cross it, stuff happens and it disrupts what's allowed, what's not allowed, what's mine, what's yours, the fence with your neighbor. And disruptive is good, right? Because then we can placate by coming back to the midline.
Yeah. Maybe the thing that is soothing in it is the continual coming back to center, coming back. That's the soothing part. But I think the rhythmic movement also does that. And I think the rocking for me when I'm doing that, it's almost like you're one of those boats you find at carnivals that kind of swings back and forth from side to side.
Yeah.
So there's sensation there that feels
right. And any
comforting.
Child in the world seeks out, and mothers instinctually know how to provide.
Yeah.
Right. All the playground equipment is facilitating this variety of movement. It's so stimulating for the brain. It's so stimulating for learning and understanding how to be in your body. It's just cool to tease it apart a little further.
Yeah.